Thank you, Governor. Congratulations. As you know, I spent some time in Iowa over the last year and a half, and we too went to the fair, and my kids enjoyed it very much. They wanted to know why we didn't go this year, and I said, but I
Oh,
did
we
ask
miss you.
yeah.
You're always welcome.
Well, I asked them, what'd you learn at the fair? And the one thing that one of my kids said is, we learned that you can fry anything.
Even butter.
So anyway, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your acknowledgement today that an economic opening towards a totalitarian state in and of itself will not guarantee a political opening. It'll allow them to control the pace and the scope of that opening for economic purposes, but it doesn't translate to political opening, and I think China is a perfect example of it. As I shared with you, I think this is the most, when they write the book about the 21st century, there'll be a chapter in there about Russia, there'll be a chapter or two there about Islamic terrorism, but I think that book's going to be dominated by chapter after chapter documenting the relationship between the United States and China. How that relationship goes in very many ways is going to determine the direction of the 21st century. There's a sense, I think, among the Chinese people and many in their government that our goal is to contain them or to keep them down, and that certainly is not the case. On the contrary, I think we would love to have a partner in the global stage of their scope and magnitude to confront some of these challenges that we face. What we're not going to do, I believe, and it's important to communicate this, is we're not going to accept some sort of sphere of influence where they dominate the region at the expense of our allies and alliances in the region. And we're also going to continue to raise the human rights issue because it does play out, as we've seen in international forums. China is a consistent vetoer of anything at the Security Council that takes on the issue of human rights, and I think that reflects the way that government operates at home. And it's always important to have a distinction between the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people. They are not the same thing. One of the things that we've talked about is what's very important both in their culture and in their politics is the ability to save face, in essence, to not be publicly embarrassed on a topic. And therefore, as you've expressed and others, the best way to raise issues with the Chinese leadership is in a private forum. And I would ask, given your time and interaction with the current president of China, can you tell us of any instance where you raised a difficult issue or pressed him on something and you felt that on an issue that perhaps was not aligned with the interests of the Chinese Communist Party? Is there such an instance that you know where you raised an issue?
That's a good question. And I think your observation is absolutely right on about how we need to try to find ways to partner with them. Obviously, my role as governor is different than my role is going to be as ambassador. As governor, I wasn't as aggressive at bringing up the human rights issues and things like that because I felt that was a federal, it was economic issues. But certainly, we've made great progress over the years in opening China for things like soybeans. I mean, we're at the point where last year, I even, when my staff told me it was 48% of our soybeans went to China, it had been 1/3, and then it had been that had gone to China, and now it's up to 48% last year. But there's also things that have gone the other way. DDGs, which is that is a byproduct from ethanol, they've now put a tariff on that that's really dramatically reduced our exports of that. So I've seen areas where we've made progress. I've also seen areas where we've lost ground. I think we just have to be vigilant in going after those things where we think they're being unfair. I think there has been some good things that Xi Jinping has done to crack down on corruption within his own party and his own government. Some people say, well, part of that is just about getting rid of his enemies. But I think some of it has really been about addressing the severe problem they do have with corruption.
Well, and Governor, I guess my point, because my time is about to expire, is there is no shortage of human rights abuses. There's you mentioned your Catholic faith, as I have as well. Bishop Su, an 85-year-old Catholic bishop who's disappeared and we presume imprisoned by the government there. What I hope to acquire from you today is a commitment that on these cases, whether it's publicly or privately, that these are issues that you will raise with the government of China, that whether it's an American or some other case, because this is really important for the human rights community to feel like their ambassador to China is someone who is going to raise these issues, even if it makes our host, in this case the Chinese Communist Party, uncomfortable. And in light of that, I mean, to meet with them in China when they're willing to meet with you, the willingness to meet with some of their exiles that are here in the United States to hear their concerns. This is a very important commitment. It's a very important part of this job, and I think it's really important for those interested in human rights globally and in China to know that they're going to have an ambassador willing to raise these issues, both in those private forums, and meet with them privately and publicly, as opposed to allowing them to be marginalized.
Well, I will do that. And just to assure you, my first trip to the old Soviet Union was in 1986. It was just shortly after Chernobyl. And I actually smuggled Natan Sharansky's book in to the American Embassy to give to his mother. My wife and I met with a group of refuseniks. You know, I'm sure that the woman that they had as our escort, the Russian, the Soviet person was a KGB agent. We slipped out of her presence, and we met with a group of refuseniks to find out what's really happening in what was called Leningrad at the time, now St. Petersburg. So I'm not bashful about meeting with dissidents or people that feel they're being discriminated or treated unfairly. You know, I have a history of being willing to do that in my previous role. As ambassador, I think it's even more important because of our country's commitment to human rights. And I would look forward to working with you and ideas that you and others have about people that are not being treated fairly, and being able to at least bring those issues up in a private setting, because as you said, it's saving face is important in their culture, but it's also, I think, important that we confront them with those areas where we feel that they are not abiding by basic human dignity.
Senator Cardin.
Well, Governor, first I want